Welcome to Curious Minds Unmasked podcast, where we uncover the hidden wonders of the world.
Area 51, right? You hear that and you think, UFOs, government secrets, the works. Well, get ready, because today we're going deep on Bob Lazar and his wild ride.
It's a story that never seems to fade away, does it?
Not even a little bit. Okay, so our man Bob, he claims he worked on actual alien tech. And not just anywhere, but at a super secret spot called S4, supposedly right by Area 51.
A secret base within the secret base.
Exactly. And you know what's even wilder? We're basing this deep dive on an interview where Lazar himself spills the beans on everything. The tech, his experience, the fallout, all of it.
It's a fascinating story, no doubt about it.
So, for anyone just tuning in, let's lay some groundwork. Lazar says he's a physicist, even worked at Los Alamos National Lab.
Los Alamos. If you're going to claim a background in top secret tech, that's the place to name drop, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's not some made-up facility, that's for sure. It's the real deal.
The birthplace of the atomic bomb. They do some serious work there, very hush-hush, often related to national security. It adds a layer of intrigue to Lazar's claims. I'll give him that.
Right. Like, it makes you wonder, what if this guy really was in those circles? But how does someone even get recruited to reverse engineer alien tech?
Well, according to Lazar, it was anything but your typical job interview. Imagine this. You get approached, handed a file, barely any information inside. Just an address, a time, and the unspoken message. Be there or else.
Sounds like the start of every spy movie ever.
A bit dramatic, isn't it? But to be fair, in the world of classified projects, especially something of this magnitude...
You probably shouldn't expect a LinkedIn message, right?
Oh, I chuckle. Exactly. It's all about compartmentalization, limiting access to information on a need-to-know basis. It's standard practice in those circles.
So no background checks, no HR paperwork, just you're in, but don't ask questions.
If Lazar is to be believed, that's pretty much how it went down.
And that's when things get really wild. He claims he sees it a disc-shaped craft he later calls the sport model.
And not just any spacecraft. This one had a little American flag sticker slapped on the side.
An American flag sticker. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up.
It's almost too absurd to be true, right? But hey, maybe even aliens appreciate a bit of patriotism.
Maybe they got it at a souvenir shop on the moon. Who knows? But jokes aside, imagine seeing something like that for the first time. It would completely upend your reality.
Absolutely. We're talking about technology, or at least the idea of technology, that would rewrite our understanding of physics.
Okay, so let's talk about this tech. Specifically, the gravity reactor at the heart of Lazar's claims. I mean, what exactly is he describing? And is any of it, possible?
Well, buckle up, because we're about to dive into some seriously mind-bending concepts. Lazar describes a reactor not much bigger than a basketball that generates its own gravitational field. And get this, no wires, no visible power source, just this compact device seemingly bending the laws of physics.
Wait, hold on. He's saying they cracked the code on gravity?
Yeah.
Like one of the fundamental forces of the universe?
That's precisely what he's suggesting, and it gets even wilder. According to Lazar, this reactor was fueled by something called element 115.
Element 115, that rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
Think back to your high school chemistry class, the periodic table. Element 115 is a super heavy element, and here's the real kicker. At the time Lazar claims to have been at S4, element 115 hadn't even been officially discovered yet.
You're kidding. So he's talking about tech powered by an element that, according to our understanding of science back then, didn't even exist. This just took a whole new turn. Okay, so we've got potential game-changing tech, possibly alien-made, powered by an element that might not even exist, tucked away in a secret base somewhere in the desert. Not gonna lie, I'm hooked. But let's back up for a second. What's the deal with this element 115? Was Lazar just making things up, or could there be something to it?
This is where it gets really interesting. So element 115, it wasn't officially synthesized until 2003.
Okay, right.
And even then, just for a fraction of a second. But there's this idea in nuclear physics, islands of stability, it's called.
Islands of stability. Like a vacation spot for atoms.
I guess you could say that. It's basically a theory that suggests that among these super heavy elements, there might be some certain isotopes that are much more stable, stick around for much longer than the ones we've observed.
So some versions of element 115 might actually be stable.
Exactly. Some scientists believe that, yeah. Now, we're talking highly theoretical here, but just for a moment, let's imagine Lazar's right. Let's say this stable element 115, it exists, and someone figures out how to use it. What could you do with that kind of power?
I mean, you're talking about potentially rewriting the laws of physics, right?
Precisely. Clean energy, anti-gravity propulsion, things we can only dream of right now. It'd be revolutionary. But again, we're deep in the realm of speculation here. The science of super heavy elements, it's still in its infancy, really. We're nowhere near proving or disproving any of this.
Okay, fair enough. But for argument's sake, let's say, just for fun, Lazar's telling the truth.
Yeah.
What would it mean if this tech, this element 115, is the real deal?
Well, for starters, it would mean we've barely scratched the surface of what's scientifically possible.
That's putting it mildly.
And if someone has had access to this kind of technology even decades ago, think about the implications. It's a whole other level of technological advancement happening in the shadows.
So we've got groundbreaking tech, potentially world-changing, hidden away from the public. But did Lazar ever say he actually saw this thing in action?
He did. In fact, his account of a test flight he claims to have witnessed is one of the most detailed, most vivid parts of his story.
What did he say? What did he see?
He describes the craft lifting off silently, effortlessly, moving in ways that, by all accounts, should be impossible. Like it's not bound by the same rules of physics that we understand.
Like it was thumbing its nose at gravity.
Exactly. And that ties in with what we're hearing more and more about these days, right? UAPs, those tic-tac-shaped objects. What if they're not breaking the sound barrier, but bending the laws of physics?
Okay, but if this tech is real, if it's as revolutionary as Lazar claims, why keep it a secret? Why not share it with the world?
Well, according to Lazar, that's exactly what he tried to do, and it's what cost him everything.
He went public, blew the whistle.
And faced the consequences, he says. Surveillance, threats, the whole 9 yards. He claims he was followed, intimidated, ultimately forced out, and discredited to keep him quiet.
Sounds like a cover-up, ripped straight from the X-Files.
Of course, it's important to remember we're hearing this from Lazar's point of view. We have to be careful about taking extraordinary claims at face value.
Right, healthy skepticism. Got it. But let's say, for the sake of this deep dive, that there's some truth to what he's saying. What does that say about the lengths to which people in power might go to protect a secret, especially if they believe it's for the greater good?
It's a slippery slope, no doubt, but it's a question worth asking, especially in light of what we're learning about government secrecy, black budgets, things we once thought were the stuff of conspiracy theories.
Exactly. Makes you wonder what else might be out there. But okay, let's talk evidence. Do we have anything to back up Lazar's claims? Any independent sources, documents, anything at all?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Concrete proof is hard to come by. But there are a few interesting tidbits. Remember the hand scanner Lazar described?
Yeah, the one at S4. Supposed to read your bone structure for ID verification. Sounded like something straight out of Star Trek.
Right. Fast forward a few years, and what do we have? Bone conduction biometrics. Not exactly mainstream yet, but the technology exists. It's similar to what Lazar described years earlier.
So he's predicting technology years ahead of its time. That's interesting.
It is interesting. And there's something else, too. Lazar mentions someone named Mike Thigpen, claims he was involved at S4 as well.
Right. You said you'd tell us more about him.
Information is scarce, but according to Lazar, this Thigpen, he was in deep at S4. And what's interesting is there have been whispers, rumors in certain circles, aerospace engineers, people who claim to have connections, that a Mike Thigpen did exist, worked on highly classified projects, potentially related to, you guessed it, advanced propulsion.
So a possible second witness, someone who could back up Lazar's story.
Potentially. If he even exists and if he's willing to talk, that is.
Big ifs.
They are indeed. But there's one more thing, one more piece of this puzzle we need to discuss. The Wilson memo. Have you heard of this?
The Wilson memo. This is where things go full conspiracy theory, right? Secret meetings, leaked documents, the works.
It's definitely an intriguing piece of the puzzle. Basically, it's a document supposedly leaked that describes a meeting, a high-level meeting.
Between who? Give us the details.
Okay, so it allegedly involves a former admiral, a guy named Wilson, and a scientist, someone who claims to have been involved in some pretty sensitive research.
Sensitive like. Alien tech sensitive.
That's the implication. And while we have to be careful with leaked documents, you never know what's real and what's not, the Wilson memo does seem to support some of the things Lazar's been saying.
Like what specifically?
Well, for one, it hints at government programs studying materials that are, let's just say they're not from around here.
Not from around here. You mean like extraterrestrial?
You said it, not me. But that's not all. The memo also suggests that there have been attempts to reverse engineer this technology, though not necessarily with much success.
So they're trying to unlock the secrets, but they're not having much luck.
That seems to be the case, if you believe the memo. And get this. There's mention of private contractors being involved.
Okay, so now we're talking about layers upon layers of secrecy. Private companies, black budgets, the whole shebang.
It's a tangled web for sure.
So let's recap. We've got Lazar's firsthand account, this potential second witness, Mike Thigpen, and now this Wilson memo, all suggesting there's something big being hidden. I don't know about you, but I'm finding it harder and harder to dismiss Lazar as just some crackpot.
It's a lot to process, no doubt. And you're right, there are a lot of intriguing threads here. But we have to be objective. We have to acknowledge that there's still a lot we don't know, a lot of gaps in the story.
Like maybe Lazar's misremembering or exaggerating.
It's possible. Or maybe he's caught up in something bigger than himself, something he doesn't fully understand.
Or maybe, just maybe, he stumbled onto something real, something that challenges everything we thought we knew.
It's a possibility we can't completely ignore.
So what's the verdict? Bob Lazar. Truth teller or master storyteller?
I wish I had a simple answer for you, but the truth is, there's no definitive proof, no smoking gun. It ultimately comes down to what you're willing to believe.
I guess that's the thing about mysteries like this, isn't it? They make you think, make you question, and sometimes that's just as powerful as any concrete answer.
What I find most fascinating is this. Even if we were to completely disregard everything else, the sheer audacity of Lazar's claims, the level of detail, the specificity of the technology he describes, it makes you wonder, where did that come from? What sparked those ideas?
It's like that saying, we only see what we know. Maybe we're not quite ready to see the full picture just yet.
Perhaps. But stories like Bob Lazar's, they force us to confront the limits of our own knowledge, to consider the possibility that there's much more to the universe than we currently understand.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Bob Lazar and the enduring mystery of Area 51. Till next time, keep looking up.